Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode. So we got Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain, is on the PSN store. It's been on for a couple weeks now, and then just now this week released the Soul Reaver series, part one and part two. Me and Danny are huge fans of the series. Kain is probably one of my favorite villains in video game history. I should mention Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain, the first one, came out in 1996, and there was a second one. We shall not talk about that one because that was god awful. But for those who don't know, there is Blood Omen Legacy of Kain was like a top down view. It was like a hack and slash game with lots of magic, really good voice acting for its time back in the 90s. So the story was great, the ending was great, and they brought it back, I guess, for us to prepare for Soul Reavers. They remastered the Soul Reaver games, and what that is a continuation of Kain's saga. And what happens is that Kain gets turned into a vampire, goes on a vengeance killing spree. He gets betrayed a bunch of times, and in the end of the Legacy of Kain series, he pretty much destroys the world, turns everybody vampires, and there are humans obviously still, but the apocalypse happens and he takes over everything and he reigns supreme. In the Soul Reaver series that came out in 1999, I remember one of the biggest things one of the marketing things that they talked about in this game. It was one of the first games for the PlayStation that did not have loading or loading screens, which is not true
Not
because the
true at all.
loading screens were the doors opening, and he just slowly, his animation, he slowly went through the doors, and this was the beginning of that type of developing, where like you go through a door, or you're crawling through a vent, or you're crawling through a crevice, and it's loading at that point. So but they marketed it as no loading, which, but it was still cool for its time. And what happens is Kain is the villain of this series. You play as a new person, Raziel, and he's seeking vengeance over Kain. And he gets resurrected. He gets killed by Kain, gets resurrected hundreds of years later, and he seeks vengeance on all the elder vampires and stuff. And there's a lot of deep lore and a lot of deep story to the game. Me and Danny love it so much. So yeah, so we just wanted to talk about our love for this series, Danny.
I think especially the Legacy of Kain. For anybody who hasn't, the Blood Omen Legacy of Kain, and for anybody who hasn't played it, it might be hard to play nowadays because obviously sometimes playing,
This is retro now to people.
yeah, playing some retro games are just rough to play, like
Yeah.
original Resident Evil shit like that. They just control funny, but the dialogue and the description of like the towns or just the simple stuff that they do, a description of the powers and the moves that you have are just so well done. And it's just surprising how well done and holds up to this day of of speech dialogue in a game. Like
Mm-hmm.
this has to be hands down the best dialogue in a game, period. Because that's what most of the game is. It's how it does its storytelling is little markers on the floor. If you pass by it, then it starts describing what this place is or what you're seeing or whatever it is, almost like a D&D thing. So again, it's just so beautifully done with that, and anybody who hasn't played it, like just it'll be worth to watch like a speed run or something, or some kind of run that they do it and show off like the description of what the story is real quick. Somebody knows what they're doing because again, it is rough to play.
Yeah.
It's a little bulky. It's the guy doesn't ever
It's
fucking
not a
move
very
where you.
fluid movement of a game.
No, no, and he doesn't move where you want him to sometimes, and it drives me nuts. But
Luckily, I still enjoy the game because I was playing it. But I remember like getting excited for a lot of these good retro games that have been coming out on the PSN store. And I think I can't remember if it was free. Yeah, it was free.
there's
Dino
for
Crisis. I played,
PSN.
no, not Blood Omen, but I
Oh
played Dino
yeah,
Crisis, and I had fond memories of Dino Crisis. I enjoyed it. I had fun with it. It was a nice kind of Resident Evil clone, but with dinosaurs. And then I played this one, and it was so god awful. Not just the control, but the graphics. The voice acting was worse than Resident
yeah.
Evil. The story is corny as hell, and I had to put it down. I played the game for maybe 3 hours, and I was just like, nope, done. Not gonna play this. Can't do this. And I
That's
just
funny.
stopped. And that kind of had me worried about future retro games that I might want to play in the store. But luckily, Blood Omen still plays well. Yes, it has its faults. It has the bad things about it, but I still enjoy it. And mostly for the story. Like the story is still great.
Yeah, the story is just really, really well done. I like the story a lot.
So yeah, so then after that, we got we got a couple weeks of Blood Omen released. I mentioned a little bit with Blood Omen 2. It's a sequel to the original Blood Omen. It just connects a bunch of story beats that happen between it happens between Blood Omen 1 and Soul Reaver 1. But Blood Omen 2, I feel like it's more of just a filler to kind of fill in some gaps about some characters they introduce and some story that they introduce in the Soul Reaver series. It's a bad hack and slash game. The less said, the better. So then we're touching into Soul Reaver, and Soul Reaver was um, technologically advanced for its time, and it was a
Yeah.
beautifully gorgeous game for its time. And one of the biggest, coolest things about that game was Raziel, the main character, can change his surroundings. He can change from the real world to the spectral world wherever you wanted to, and you use this to solve puzzles, and you use this to fight certain monsters and stuff like that. It was very well done.
I
Voice
like Soul
acting was
River
still
a
good.
lot.
Go ahead.
So the storyline, one of the best things that I liked about Soul Reaver to begin with was we played Blood Omen Legacy of Kain, and Blood Omen Legacy of Kain, when you first play that game, well, when you beat the game, you're given a choice of a good ending and a bad ending. And the good ending is sacrifice yourself and restore the pillars. They're killing 7 pillars to restore 7 pillars. And when you get to the last one, it's like, okay, the last pillar is you, basically. You need to sacrifice yourself to fully restore the pillars. If you don't, spoiler, sorry, for a fucking
20 year
25-year-old game.
game. 25. Yeah.
If you don't kill it, if you don't restore, sorry, if you don't sacrifice yourself, the pillars can't be restored, and they're gonna decay and rot, and all this will be for naught, and the world gonna be destroyed. And you get a choice to go, no, I'm gonna run this. I'm gonna run this and run everything, and be the last of these pillars standing, and run everything and run in decay, or again, you sacrifice yourself. And again, that was always cool because it's like, oh, they gave you an option. Most games back then, especially, didn't give you or didn't have multiple endings. So when you play Soul Reaver, you're like, yo, they chose the bad ending. The one that probably most people chose first anyway, they chose that ending. That's the
Mm-hmm.
ending that they went with.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't save himself. He didn't sacrifice himself. He fucking became the king of this world, and this world is
That was
now
the
shit.
ultimate vengeance. That he just
Yeah,
he
and
just destroyed
exactly.
everything.
He destroyed everything, and he went, and then you play a Soul Reaver he becomes jealous of Raziel,
Yeah.
who
So
he becomes jealous
Raziel
of.
evolves and he grows wings. So he's the
Yeah,
first vampire with wings. And Kain, he's
he's
still the
jealous.
emperor, and he's jealous, and he rips them off and casts them into a freaking water because they're weak
Yeah, and
against
again,
water.
so there becomes this great storyline of this ruler who you played as in the first one, who especially if you're being told you're gonna have a sequel, because this came out before the Blood Omen 2.
Hmm.
um you have the sequel to this game, and he's the ruler. You're not playing as him, you're playing as Razi, and these are the reasons why. You're like, wow, that's really fucking cool. That makes sense why he's the main bad guy. He has his ultimate fucking sword. Yeah, he all this is awesome. And that, again, just the storytelling and what they did in like the first 30 minutes of that game just fit so perfectly with the great story telling that they did in the first part, in the original one. And that's what it was just like, this is fucking awesome. And then the gameplay itself, the game was yes, it had some simple fighting stuff, but it was so much of that classic RPG type puzzles.
It was
the
like a
Tomb Raider
Metroidvania.
puzzles.
Metroidvania,
Ye-
because you gain certain powers after killing the bosses, and then you can open up other places.
Yeah, but it wasn't even that. It was to getting to that was more fun because it's
Yeah.
like, again, you have to, in order to get into the gate, you got to turn into the other realm, because in the other realm there's no gate there. And it was the first game to do that. They do it a lot now, but this was
Hmm.
the first one to do that. And again, that was just like, these puzzles were so smart. And then you're pushing. Had a lot of pushing blocks and shit, and putting them in certain places to do stuff. And it's like Zelda does that a lot right now, but this did
Hmm.
it first. And that's what made it so special, because you not only did you have this fun combat system that they have with these really cool finishers and everything, but then you also have this smart game with puzzles and everything, and it's just really nicely done. The second one, I don't remember the second one as much being that much. I think it just continued the story more than anything else.
I don't think it
It
changed too
didn't.
much drastically with gameplay
No,
wise.
no, not gameplay.
Oh,
It's
I think actually the only, maybe I'm wrong. I can't remember, but I think the only thing they really changed was that you had different elements for your Soul Reaver sword, different
Yeah,
powers for the sword
it was like
itself.
minor things. Like you could have called it a fucking DLC version of
Yeah.
Soul Reaver 2, and I remember that being the only kind of disappointing thing, but not really caring because
Hmm.
again, the story is so fun that you want
Yeah.
more of this world. And then when Blood Omen 2 came out, and they just wanted to excuse people still love the character of Kain. Um, they love that character, so they're like, well, we need to make him the main character again. And they
Hmm.
tried to put in a filler story of what happened in between, and it's just like it didn't really work. And
Yeah.
mostly because again, the gameplay was really poor, and they didn't have the same really fun storytelling that they did in any of the other ones. Nothing really connected. It was all just new shit for no reason, and it just didn't work at all.
I find it
So,
strange that they released Soul Reaver 1 and 2, but they didn't do the third one, because there is a third one. There's Soul Reaver 1 and 2, and then there's Soul Reaver Defiance. And Defiance kind of like closes everything together, and they leave you hanging in the ending. No spoilers, but they leave you hanging in the ending with a lot of unfinished story. So, which is why like the fan base, they were like they're dying for more Soul Reaver, like the continuation and stuff. There was a lot of connections between Raziel and Kain, that they were connected in certain ways. It was part of destiny. There's a lot of time manipulation involved. So like it's really good that if anyone's gonna jump into these games, you would start off with either Soul Reaver 1, 2, and 3. But I personally would recommend doing Blood Omen so you could understand Kane's motivations and his character. Do Blood Omen first and then 1, 2, and 3. Again, fuck Blood Omen 2. It's
yeah.
it's just a filler game. Like yes, it's a little bit more character development and story for Kane. So if you want to do a lore dive into it, just look up a video or something about that. But I would avoid that gameplay altogether. Um, but there is a lot of story, and it's very well done. It's not very convoluted, even though there is a bit of like time jumps and time manipulation and things. But it overall, it's just so freaking good. I can't wait to jump on it.
Mhm.
Anything else before we end up?
No, that's pretty much it. It was just, I think I can't. I really want them to do a remake, and I know it's. I
I don't
like
even want a
remakes.
remake. I just want I don't want a continuation. Just do a continuation.
I really want to. Again, I love the original Blood Omen. Like I said, came so much, and I
A
think that they
remake
did.
of Blood Omen, yes.
That's what I'm saying. Not, and
Okay.
yeah, obviously continuation would be nice, but I think to start, I would love a remake. The Resident Evil or the
So,
Final Fantasy
question
treatment.
though, would you want a remake of Blood Omen same way, top down, same like art style and stuff, or would you want it more 3D ish like they did
They,
with Final Fantasy 7?
yeah, I would think, whatever, as long as you can have that, it doesn't really matter as long as you get into that immersive world because they had a lot of towns that you would quickly go into as part of the game, and they
Hmm.
were very like 2D art style. But I feel like they can really make that kind of an open world game almost. Like and you would feel like you're in like a Skyrim type because the place was kind of like a Skyrim type world before there was a thing, but it's just you
Hmm.
couldn't. Yeah, obviously, they didn't have the technologies to build all these towns and stuff, and now they could flush that out along with all the other places that the dungeons and because that showed the dungeons and perhaps some temples and places that you went into,
Yeah.
and having all that to be flushed in, like they can easily make it first like you could easily see that being a multi-part game, like the way they did Final Fantasy because
Hmm.
there is so much that they do, and it just because they don't have the technology, they kind of just they gloss over it real quick. So it could be so immersive really easily. And again, there's a lot of bad guys, 7 different pillars and 7 different lands and areas you go
Oh yeah.
to,
By the
and it could
way,
be just a great game.
yeah. But by the way, there was, for anyone who wants to look it up, there was a canceled Legacy of Kain game. It was, oh, let me see here. How long ago was it? It was quite a few years ago. I can't really see, but there was a Legacy of Kain game called Dead Sun, and it introduced a new character. There's a bit of like alpha footage that people can look up, and nobody knows what the story was, who this character was, and how
Oh
he
yeah.
involves himself with. Nobody knows how he involves himself with Kain and Raziel and all that. But it was supposedly another game in the series, and that got canceled. I don't understand why, because I think the fan base is fairly vocal about wanting things to continue, but I don't know. And then instead, we got a freaking online multiplayer game. What was it, like a third person hero shooter bullshit thing?
I don't
It was on
remember.
Steam. It was called Nosgoth.
Hmm.
It was a really bad third person shooter. It was an online shooter, and I don't know who in their fucking mind would want to make a game like this when you've got story and these single player games that people know about, but you turn it multiplayer. And that was this was so long ago. This is probably more of the start of where live service was, because we just finished talking about live service games. So it's just like, yeah, it was really bad, and of course it got canceled after about, I want to say maybe like 2 years, a year or two. But
Hmm.
yeah,
I
play
don't know about that.
play the Soul Reaver games, guys. Play the Blood Omen game. It's fucking awesome. It's good story. It's good content. It's yeah. So that's it. We'll leave it at that. Leave your comments in the comments. um, leave your comments in the comments, and feel free to follow the social media as well. And I'll get back to you guys if you guys want to chat later.